Hey everyone, Chef Scott here for Devil's Food Kitchen. Today I want to show you how I make my own custom chocolate molds and how easy it is for you to do the same. I want to thank TFK fan Monica for the inspiration for this video. Monica wrote in a few days ago to the blog wondering how I do these molds. This is for you, Monica. I hope you take a look at the video and that it helps you figure it out and you can make your own showpieces in your kitchen. I don't want to take credit for this technique. This was actually something I first saw from a great chef named Stefan Leroux, and then it was modified into its current version by another great chef named Josh Johnson. So those guys deserve the credit. I'm just going to show you how it's done. Of course, links to all of the equipment that we use today will be in the description below, as well as a link to the original blog post that inspired all of this. So I hope you check that out too to see a little behind the scenes of how I create these sculptures. And last, I want to give a quick shout out to Purgatory in Salt Lake City, Utah for this awesome t-shirt. I was able to go there a few months ago during a road trip and had some amazing tonkatsu ramen. If you happen to be in the Salt Lake City area, I highly recommend the place. It's pretty cool. Purgatory, thanks for the shirt. So now let's gather all of our materials and get started. The first step in the process is figuring out just what size your mold needs to be. I'm planning to make a chocolate stand for an artistic piece I've got in mind, which is represented here by the egg mold. So I'm just trying to figure out how tall I want the stand to be, which is going to be my mold. So I'm going to make my mold box about 12 inches long by 3 inches wide, and I'm laying that out on foam core. Foam core is light, it's sturdy, it's relatively inexpensive. It's just a dense foam with cardstock on either side. It's a really great material to use for a mold base. Once I've laid out the dimensions, I'm just going to cut that piece out. I leave about a 1-inch gap around all of the walls for the mold. I can save the rest of that foam core to use for another time. This is the most important part, where I score into the pencil lines that I created in the last step. I'm not trying to cut all the way through the foam core. I just want to pierce one side and start a groove where the mold walls will actually insert. It's really important to have a sharp knife in this point. I know that knife blade looks pretty janky, but it is brand new, just a little rusty. And I like using a matte knife blade because it's a little thicker than an X-Acto knife. It's still really, really precise. So here I'm just trying to score into the top of the foam core. I'm going to double check that I have not cut through the piece anywhere, and if I haven't, which it looks like we're all good, we're ready for the next step. Now I'm going to take a bowl scraper, but you could use an offset spatula or the back of a paring knife to dig into that cut channel and widen it a little bit. If I just left it with the matte knife cut, it's a little too thin for the cardboard walls to fit into, but this widens that gap, it pushes the foam out of the way, and will make a nice snug insert for the mold walls. I like making the walls of my molds out of cake box cardboard. It's a pretty sturdy cardstock that has one side which is water and fat resistant, which is perfect for chocolate. So here I have a standard 12-inch cake box, and I'm just cutting off the outside flaps to give myself a nice continuous sheet of the cardstock. I have to check to see how tall I want the mold walls to be, and that height is going to be the thickness of the final chocolate piece. Once I have the mold wall height, which in this case is about 2.5 inches, I'm going to measure that out and cut one long continuous strip of cardboard that's 2.5 inches wide. I'll then cut this into several pieces, and those will become the walls of my mold. The cake board had a natural crease that happened to work with the mold walls that I've outlined, so I'm trying to see if that will work so I don't have to cut those two pieces. The fewer cut pieces, the better, the sturdier the wall will be. Here I'm going to measure off the overlap, trim that off, and then I'll have my first piece of wall. Now I take the cake board and press it into the groove I created in the last step. It takes a little bit to get it started, but once the first piece locks in, the rest locks in pretty easily. Make sure that the white side of the cake box, which is the fat and water resistant side, is facing in, because that's the side that's going to be touching the chocolate. After all 4 of the mold walls are inserted into the base, I tape the corners together. Here I'm just using blue painter's tape. I think that works just fine. You could use masking tape or scotch tape. You could even hot glue the edges together, although it's a little bit more tedious. I'm going to add a second piece of tape as support, and just to make sure that there's no gap at the base of the mold wall where it meets the base of the mold. That way I know chocolate's not going to come out. The last thing to do is just check that there are no gaps and you're ready to cast. That's all there is to making a custom chocolate mold of your own. If you take care to create an interior cavity that is larger than the final dimension you need, you don't have to be perfect with your walls, because once you unmold the piece, you can always remove chocolate to true up all of your edges. So these don't really have to be perfectly straight. If you happen to notice gaps between the walls of your mold and the base, you can always fill those with hot glue around the outside of the mold. I've done that many times, especially with a complex curved shape. Generally, I consider these a one-use mold, but sometimes you can get multiple uses out of it. The best bet, though, is if you have a shape that you're going to repeat many times, that you create one template that you can always keep safe and then use to create a new mold when you need it. If you enjoyed this video, I hope you'll consider subscribing. And if you are a subscriber, please don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss another DFK video when it pops up. Until next time, thanks for watching. I'm Chef Scott for Devil's Food Kitchen.